Maybe you're somebody who was meant to be living on the interest from your lifetime of savings, which has now plummeted to 0.23%, and you are losing money simply by breathing, costing you money just to be alive. 0207 224 2000. And delighted to say that we welcome to the programme Jonathan Davis, economist and investment advisor at Jonathan Davis Wealth Management. Hello, Jonathan. Good morning to you.
Hi, Vanessa.
Mr. Charles Bean, on his annual salary of $250,000, says to us we must stop moaning and start spending. Is he right?
I think he's diabolically wrong. However, the suggestion we should start spending is a total nonsense, because that's all society has been doing for the last 10 years. The likes of him and the political elite and the banking elite got people to borrow beyond belief over the last 10 years, an orgy of debt and spend, and now we have the biggest economic hangover in history, I'm afraid to say. And for him to suggest that people should dwindle their savings when the likes of him have already decimated people's pensions, they've created a housing bubble which is now bursting. It's been bursting since the end of 2007. And let's face it, the only place that people really have money now is houses. And if you've got money in the Bank of the Building Society and you've got savings, the last thing you should do is squander it, because you're going to need it given the coming economic onslaught.
All right, well, explain to me how the sums add up then. Say you do have, let's say you've got £1,000 in an interest account or a savings account. You are literally losing money by leaving it there, aren't you? Because the interest rate you're earning is so feeble in comparison with inflation that you're losing money as it lies there in the account. Is that right?
Well, what you're saying is, and what he's saying is, look, if inflation is 4 or 5% and you're only getting half or 1% interest, then of course it's losing purchasing power on an annual basis.
Yes.
But, you know, Charles Bean, who's meant to be an economist, who's meant to have a brain, should understand the difference in short-termism and long-termism. And it's short-termism that's got us into this massive economic headache that we're in. And if you only consider the annual difference, then you're absolutely correct, and he's absolutely correct. In one sense, people are losing purchasing power. But come on, we are at the lowest interest rates in the history of his organisation, the Bank of England, 400 years. There is no way that interest rates are going to go any lower. In other words, there's only one direction they're going to go, and that's up. I'm not suggesting they're going to go up this year or next year, but they are going to go up. And when you consider that inflation is going to rise, because that's also actually quite average, quite low in historical terms, inflation will rise, the cost of living will rise, people will need their savings in the future to keep them going.
What about this idea that we must spread money like manure to fertilise business and keep everything going round? So if you're sitting there looking at your living room and you're thinking, God, I can't really afford to go out anywhere, so I'm going to spend an awful lot of time looking at my living room, the right and proper and dutiful thing to do is think, well, as I'm going to be stuck in my living room, I think I'll get some new curtains. I think I'll buy a new coffee table, a nice lamp to put on it, and I might buy a lovely rug as well. And that way you're spreading what little you have around. So the rug man makes some money, and the light man makes some money, the curtain lady makes a few quid, and that way everybody can afford to survive another winter. Whereas if you sit there in your living room, stuck in it, not spending a bean of your money, as Mr. Bean would urge you to do, you just sit there looking at your bleak, wretched living room, trying to survive on beans on toast for the winter, nobody makes a penny.
Yeah, you paint a picture that everyone's shivering in dark, dank houses, and they're all huddled round a one-bar electric fire and living a decrepit life. Well, of course, that isn't the reality. What is the reality? As I say, the likes of Charles Bean, the political elite, the banking elite, encouraged people to borrow beyond belief for 10 years because of people like him. People are now maxed out on debt, enormous credit card debt, enormous mortgage debt, that I can tell you hundreds of thousands of Londoners will never be able to pay back. I can't imagine how the average Londoner will be able to pay back a £300,000-500,000 mortgage. Mm-hmm. I just don't know how they're going to be able to do that. The assumption was that by the Bank of England pushing down interest rates and allowing the banks to lend and lend and lend, that house prices would rise forever. I repeat, that's where the majority of people have got their savings, in houses. Well, house prices are not going to rise forever. In fact, it's on a downward trend. Thus, like the 1930s, I'm afraid to say we are seeing literally the decimation of the middle classes, and utterances from people like Charles Bean, who should put their brain in gear and put their mouth in reverse gear. It's truly remarkable. It's all very well that, you know, they push people to borrow and spend for 10 years, and that got the economy doing what it did. But what do we have now? We have debts beyond belief in households and debts beyond belief in the government. And because of utterances like that from Charles Bean, he's trying to get people to go further into debt, reduce their savings, when in fact they're going to need their savings over the next 10 years when the real difficulties will arise.
Jonathan, thank you so much. Jonathan Davis from Jonathan Davis Wealth Management. You can't say he's a man who lacks passion. The absolute opposite philosophy from that expressed by Charles Bean, Deputy Governor of the Bank of England. Charles Bean says, spend, 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 and stop moaning. Jonathan Davis says, don't moan, it's pretty pointless. You've already spent. That's why we're all in the state we're in. Save, 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 and don't worry too much about interest rates. Eventually they will come up. And I'm asking about your situation this morning. Are you saving? Are you spending? When's the last time you really splashed out? Do you think, yeah, I'd love to spend if I had a few quid, but I haven't got any money. I haven't got a bean, Mr. Bean. 0207 224 2000, and it's time for the travel.